Some people are psychologically immune to manipulation, and the techniques they use, they're not what you think. You've probably met someone like this. They see through flattery like it's glass. They catch guilt trips before they land. They walk away from toxic situations while everyone else is still trying to figure out what happened. Here's what you need to know. Manipulation resistance isn't about being cold or paranoid. It's a sophisticated psychological defense system built on 3 specific pillars that anyone can develop. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what separates the manipulatable from the unshakable. But here's what makes this really interesting. The research I found shows that manipulators actually avoid certain people like the plague. They perform rapid assessments looking for specific weaknesses, and when they don't find them, they move on. You're about to learn what those red flags are. Picture yourself in a conversation where someone's story doesn't quite add up. Most people feel that discomfort but push it aside. They don't want to seem rude. They give the benefit of the doubt. People who can't be manipulated, they pause right there. They've got what researchers call epistemic vigilance, basically. Their internal bullshit detector is always running at full capacity. But here's what's fascinating. It's not exhausting for them. While most of us have to consciously engage our critical thinking, which burns mental energy, resistant people have made skepticism a low-cost habit. It's their default setting. Think about gaslighting for a second. It works by making you doubt your own memory and perception. The manipulator says something happened differently than you remember, and slowly you start questioning yourself. But when you've got strong metacognition, which is just thinking about your thinking, you maintain an accurate internal map of reality. When someone tries to tell you a different story, you can check it against your verified memory like pulling up security footage. The manipulation attempt gets identified immediately, not as a different perspective, but as a deliberate tactic. And here's the clincher. Resistant people have a high need for cognition. They actually enjoy hard thinking. So when a manipulator tries to rush them into a quick decision, which is a classic tactic to bypass careful processing, it backfires completely. The time pressure itself becomes the evidence of manipulation. Let's talk about where manipulation really gets its power: your emotions. Most manipulation techniques work by hijacking your emotional state. Guilt tripping, flattery, creating artificial urgency, fear of missing out. The manipulator is essentially trying to make you feel something so intensely that you'll do what they want just to resolve that feeling. But imagine someone who derives their sense of worth entirely from within. Not from likes, not from approval, not from whether people think they're good or smart or attractive. This is what psychologists call an internal locus of control combined with secure self-esteem. When a manipulator comes along with excessive flattery, instead of feeling validated, this person immediately recognizes it as anomalous social behavior. Nobody gives that much praise that quickly, unless they want something. The flattery doesn't land because the emotional need it's designed to exploit. It simply doesn't exist. And it works the other way too. When the manipulator switches tactics and tries criticism or guilt, which they absolutely will, it bounces right off. Because the person's self-worth isn't dependent on that external feedback. Here's a technique that manipulation-resistant people use instinctively. Emotional granularity. Instead of feeling vague discomfort or anxiety, they can identify the precise emotion. They'll think, I'm not actually feeling guilty about this situation. I'm feeling angry that someone's trying to make me feel guilty. By labeling the emotion accurately, they maintain control over it. The feeling transforms from a prompt for compliance into objective data confirming the manipulation attempt. Now we get to the part that makes manipulators actually abandon their efforts. Boundaries, but not the kind most people think about. See, lots of people can set boundaries. They'll say no when pushed. But manipulation-resistant people have what researchers call boundary intelligence. They don't just set boundaries, they enforce them immediately and without compromise. The first time a boundary gets violated, there are consequences. Maybe it's confrontation, maybe it's relationship termination, but the consequence is swift and certain. This creates what I call the high cost of entry profile. Sophisticated manipulators are always doing a cost-benefit analysis. They're looking for low-friction targets who will yield easily. When they encounter someone with rigid boundaries, fierce assertiveness, and a demonstrated willingness to walk away, the math doesn't work. The effort required to manipulate this person exceeds any potential benefit. There's a fascinating psychological principle here called reactance theory. When people with high trait reactance feel their freedom is being threatened, even slightly, they experience a strong motivational drive to restore that freedom. For manipulation-resistant people, requests or persuasive messages are immediately perceived as threats to their autonomy. This triggers active resistance rather than passive consideration. The manipulator isn't just facing someone who might say no, they're facing someone who's psychologically wired to push back. And here's what really matters for you watching this. This isn't about being difficult or combative. Resistant people use assertiveness, which sits perfectly between aggressive hostility and passive compliance. They clearly articulate their needs and limits without escalating. This forces the manipulation out of subtlety and into open view, where it can't survive. Look, if you grew up in an environment where your autonomy was respected, where your feelings were validated and where boundaries were normal, you probably already have many of these characteristics. But if you didn't, and let's be honest, most of us didn't, these are skills you can develop. The beautiful thing about understanding how manipulation works is that you can't unsee it. Once you know that excessive flattery is a tactic, that time pressure is designed to bypass your thinking, that guilt is being manufactured rather than deserved, you start catching these attempts in real time. Here's your homework. Next time someone makes you feel intensely uncomfortable in a conversation, pause and identify the specific emotion. Not, I feel bad, but I feel pressured, or I feel manipulated into feeling guilty. That simple act of emotional granularity will completely change how you respond. The people who can't be manipulated aren't superheroes. They're just folks who've built a psychological immune system through awareness, practice, and a non-negotiable commitment to their own autonomy. Drop a comment and share your story. And if this resonated with you, hit like and subscribe because we dive deep into psychology that actually explains how your mind works. See you next time.